My job is to somehow make them curious enough or persuade them by hook or crook to get more aware of themselves and where they came from and what they are into and what is already there, and just to bring it out. This is what compels me to compel them, and I will do it by whatever means necessary.
Welcome to the Black Girls Heal podcast, where we talk about healing our intimacy disorders, unresolved trauma, and building a healthy relationship with first ourselves and then others. Every episode, we will talk about advice you can apply today to break unhealthy patterns and grow in your self-worth. I'm Sheena Lachey, love addiction coach and trauma specialist. Let's begin. Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of Black Girls Heal. I am so happy to be with you today. I'm so happy to welcome you in today. Today is a beautiful day. We are on our final series, y'all. So we just wrapped up the series before this one, and this is our final series where we are overviewing one of the most important set of topics that we talk about here. And this series is going to be all about sisterhood and friendship. Bar none, out of all the questions that I get, even though I teach from a romantic lens, and for those of you who are just now joining me on this journey, I teach from a romantic lens, not because to intentionally center relationships as if they are the end all be all, but my belief is that there are multiple entry points into the healing journey. Some of us have extreme depression. We decide to go and get help for that. Some of us have extreme anxiety. We decide to go and get help for that. Some of us have extreme grief, and we decided to go and get help for that. That was actually my entry point. Even though I had a whole lot of relationship issues on the side, grief was what brought me into my therapeutic journey. But despite all that, I choose to use relationships because I believe that they are a wonderful indicator and mirror for how we feel about ourselves, what we allow in, what our boundaries look like, what we feel like we're available for, the abandonment issues that might still be there, the rejection issues, the wounds for us to clear out, to be replaced with feelings of security, of safety, of groundedness, of balance, of joy and happiness and trust to give to people that make life better. You know, us as human beings, we are built to be in relationship. We're built to be in community. For some of us, it's just going to be a trusted one or two or three, maybe at the most people that we will center our lives around and build life with. And for some of us, it is going to be truly looking like a village, looking like a tribe, maybe cycling in friends and relationships over the years and decades. There's no right or wrong answer. It's just about making sure that the people that are there are the people that add life, that they give to you and they don't take away. And also that you are showing up as a healthy member of that tribe, that you're giving to people as well, that you are able to contribute to the relationships. And so like I was saying, bar none, outside the romantic partnership questions, I get so many questions about friendships, about sisterhood, about what to do between conflict. How do you cope with a breakup? How do you know if someone's actually a good friend? And this is all from people who, we're all grown here, right? And these are still issues that we will work through and need to navigate, especially if they have some type of connection to unresolved trauma, which is what's adding the blinders to how do I move forward? How do I show up? How do I be open and available and work through this, right? So with that said, today's first episode, our first episode of the series, is we are revisiting how to make adult female friendships. I thought this would be a great way for us to start off because there are many of us that don't feel like we have the friendships that we want. Or maybe we do have friendships, but it's with people that we actually feel like we need to cycle out. Maybe we feel like we've outgrown them. Maybe we are the person who's always giving and showing up, but we haven't found the people to match that same energy. And so this episode is such an incredible resource. I refer to it often and I refer other people to it. So I hope that you enjoy. She gives so many great notes, our guest expert, which I'll introduce after the jump. But yeah, that's it. Let's go ahead and jump on in. Thanks for listening to this week's podcast. Before we get started, let's take a small break to say thank you to this week's sponsors. All right, so today I have Danielle Bayard Jackson with us. Hey, Danielle.
Hello, how are you?
I am fantastic. I
I'm so excited to have you on this platform. I have been following you for a long time and learning about female friendships and learning about how to make them more full and rich and all the things that get in the way. And I am so excited to have you on the podcast to talk about that with my audience as well.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. This is an important topic of conversation, so I'm glad we're having the dialogue.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So I always like for my guests to introduce themselves. So I would love for you to tell the audience if some people haven't heard of you, more about you.
So my name is Danielle Bayard Jackson. I am a publicist by day and a certified friendship coach at night, which often raises eyebrows. But what that means is, think about it. You can get support for any other area in your life. So why not for your friendships, which some would argue is the most important relationship you'll ever have. And so as a coach, women will come to me for one-off sessions to help them with anything ranging from making new friends because they moved to a new city or because they had a baby and they realize all their friendships dissolved. They'll bring me in when they're having a particular conflict with a friend and they feel like they have nobody to talk to about it, or when they're struggling with grieving the end of a platonic relationship. So that whole range of friendship complexities, that's what women kind of bring me in to support them with. And so far, it's been a really fun journey.
Yeah, that's awesome. So your background is public relations. How did you get into the realm of friendship coaching?
It's funny. I always make the joke that, being a friendship coach was never exactly on my vision board when I was like 8 years old. So, it wasn't a thing, but I was actually a high school English teacher for 6 years, teaching 17 and 18-year-olds. So I often heard the drama between classes, or some of the girls would come to me after class in like a big sisterly way with their issues. And so I kind of helped them navigate it. I didn't realize what I was doing at the time, but I made the foolish mistake of dismissing it as teenage drama when I left the classroom and I got into public relations. Because when I got into PR, I started to realize here I am having conversations with these high-powered women who own businesses, and they're confiding in me that, they have drama as well, or that they don't have any friends at all because they're so career focused. And that's when I had an aha moment of, oh, wait a second, this is something that, grips us at every stage of womanhood. We're trying to figure out how to navigate friendships, specifically with other women. And so I went home one night after a talk with a client, and I was curious. I went on Amazon and I was looking for books on friendship. And at the time, there was virtually nothing. And if a search result did pull it up, it was a book for kids. And I thought, wow, is this what we think of friendship? Like it's something kids need help with. And so I already had my education background, but I went and got certified to coach. And then I just became obsessed with research surrounding female friendship. And so I've been doing this specifically for 2 years, and it's been really interesting.
That's great. Can you say a little bit more of why do you think it's hard for us to keep and maintain female friendships for some of us?
I think the simplest answer is that we've never been taught how to do it. If you think about it, the extent of our conversation around friendship is you either have them or you don't. And if you don't, what's wrong with you? That's the extent of the conversation around having friends. And so we never learned how to do it. And it makes sense. When you're in grade school, we fall into natural friendships. You got your classmates who you see every day for 8 hours a day. You go to college, you're in the dorms, you got people right down the hall. And so it normally really kind of happens when we hit around the age of like 25, which that's the age research shows us that our social network grows exponentially until about that age, at which point it begins to decline rapidly. And it's because, hey, we've prioritized other things. Now we're focused on marriage, our career, we're having babies, we're moving. And friendship kind of falls by the wayside. It's something we'll get to it if I have time. And then once we get out there on our own, without the social backdrop of an institution, school or work or something like that, we have an aha moment of, oh my gosh, how do I do this? How do I make friends? If I'm having drama with a friend, we haven't normalized conflict enough to know, hey, talk through it. Y'all get some understanding. and then move forward together, but there's, do we have models to show us how to work through that, and that it's totally okay to have healthy conflict. So I think, we haven't really been taught it. And we sometimes hear the echo chamber of other women who, have distorted views of what it should be, and we emulate that. So I have a lot of theories, but the simplest response, I think, is that we struggle with friendships because we never learned how to navigate them.
Mm-hmm. So I have a question, and this may be a really basic question, but I think it's important, especially with what you just said about people having different models of what friendship should look like. How do you define friendship, or I guess more specifically, what a healthy friendship would look like?
Yeah, I think that's actually the perfect question to start the conversation, because I'm noticing sometimes when we use the word friend, we're having two different conversations. And friend means something different to everybody. Some people use it loosely. Some people are like, oh no, you have to earn that title. And so on the most fundamental level, friendship is about a healthy and reciprocal relationship with someone where you can show up as your best self and as your worst self, and you're just eager to support each other. Oftentimes, I think we have a lot of mistakes that we make when we enter into a friendship, but we're thinking about how we can be served, and we're looking for our people, for us, who just get us. But you are also required to show up and be a friend. And so I think anything that's healthy, where you can show up as your real self, and where both parties are eager to support the other, I think that's a good indicator of a solid platonic relationship.
Mm-hmm. So if I'm listening to this podcast and I'm thinking, I really want some good friends, where do I start?
The first thing I like to say, because a lot of people will come to me, the number one question is always, how do I make new friends? How? And there's always some kind of qualifier. It's, how do I make new friends as a student, as an introvert, as a mother? So there's always some kind of qualifier, but it's, how do I make new friends? And the very first thing I like to start with is, we often use the phrase make new friends synonymously with the phrase meet new people. And the two are not necessarily the same. So making new friends simply refers to the art of cultivating something meaningful with another person. And who says we have to start from scratch? So for a lot of us, we have people in our existing network that we've written off for whatever reason as a potential friend. So we know a lot of acquaintances who we think are great, but for whatever reason, we told ourselves there's not potential there to go further. So I always like to say, start with the people you already know, where you have mutual friends, or where you used to work together, and you already have some kind of, touchstone and some familiarity. And then there, it's about, momentum. It's about, opening up a little bit and exercising a little more vulnerability than you normally would, which I could, talk about just even that all day, because, we get that wrong, what it means to be vulnerable and things like that. But, I'd say first start with how you can show up as a friend, where you think you're lacking, where you think your strengths are. And it does really require self-assessment. I like to start there. The second thing I say is to get really clear on what you expect, which again sounds fundamental, but I begin every coaching session with that question. What do you even expect of friendship? Because right there, for some of us, I'm identifying problems at the root. If you expect somebody to be there every time you call, to have the right things to say, to just get you, and you don't have to communicate your boundaries or your needs, already we're having issues. And so, get clear on what you expect of other people, of your capacity, to show up, what your limitations are. And then also, finally, to get the mindset right that it requires time. I think this whole Insta friend thing that we expect is just selling a lot of our friendships short. It does take time to nurture something and get comfortable, to learn each other's humor and boundaries, and to prove you're trustworthy. It takes time. So I think if we wrap our mind around those things, then we're ready to really get out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Can you say a little bit more about the fact that it takes time? I think, on this platform, I talk a lot about our feelings of unworthiness and how we can get really triggered by outside factors that we feel like confirms the fact that we're not worthy, or that people don't want us, or that things are always going to be this way for us. So what I make up is, if someone is trying to make friends and it's taking longer than they may want, They may logically know it takes time, but it just reinforces this felt sense of loneliness as they're waiting for the official friendship title. So can you say a little bit more about how to deal with that waiting period?
Oh, I love that. That's so true. And to your point, it goes back to kind of like, the expectations and not getting discouraged, not starting to internalize, why aren't we besties yet? What's wrong with me? Am I not interesting enough, cool enough? I want to look at that on the reverse end. If you expect things to move quickly, and if they don't, you become discouraged, then my fear is that you're either ending relationships prematurely, or you're trying to expedite the process, and you're divulging too much too soon because you're hoping it brings you close. And so there are a lot of unhealthy things that come from an expectation that you should have closeness and intimacy immediately. And if we don't get that right, we're going to create more issues. And so I do see women, to your point, who begin to think it's too late for me, or if this is taking a long time, what am I doing wrong? Or we often compare, well, she has friends that she's had since high school, and I just met her, and I'll never be, as close as she is with those girls. And so we do a lot of mental things that even takes us out of the running. And so, I know it's easier said than done, but I do like to advise, find a way to stay present. If we had a good dinner and a good laugh, I have to find a way to be satisfied that we had this really good moment of connection, and then pair that with intention for more in the future. But if I'm like, okay, well, that went really well, and so now she can be my bestie, and now let's plan vacations. And if she doesn't respond quickly enough to my text, what does that mean? I guess I'm not interesting enough. I guess she doesn't care anymore. And all those narratives that we create for ourselves, and then it determines our behavior. So we're responding to a story we told ourselves, and so we have to kind of keep those things in check. Friendship, but relationships just in general, it does expose a lot of insecurities, and when we get close to people, sometimes we fear those insecurities will be exposed. But that's why we said the self-work is so important, so that you can show up as a good friend and kind of have like a balanced mindset and healthy expectations. But if it helps put anybody at ease, I like to share research too, to give us perspective. And one study that people in the friendship space tend to refer to a lot is a study by the University of Kansas, which attempted to quantify how long it takes to make a friend. Now, not everything's an exact science, but what they came up with is that it takes about 50 hours to begin to consider somebody a familiar acquaintance, 90 hours to consider them a friend, and 200 hours to consider somebody a best friend, which is like a jaw-dropping number. But I always think like, hey, that's why so many people get close at work. You're spending 40 hours a week together. You see them all day long. So it is possible, but it requires intention. And so y'all go out to coffee. That's great. But how can you check in with her again? How can you, schedule another phone call? How can you text her and say, hey, I was thinking of you, or send her a link that's like, hey, you mentioned this in our last conversation. I knew you could appreciate this. I thought of you. I'm sending it over. But how can we do the work to stay top of mind, to foster closeness and comfort, and those beginning fundamental stages of true friendship?
Yes, that is beautiful. Thank you for dropping those numbers too, to quantify, because I think what is short and what's a long time is really relative. And so for people to have actual hours, I think that's going to help put a lot of things in perspective for people listening. So we are hopefully coming to the end of our pandemic. And so outside is opening back up. But we're all dealing with the effects of the last year of quarantine, whether or not we've quarantined or not personally. It's affected the world. And so something that I'm noticing with the people that I serve, even people in myself or my people in my own friendship group, is that we don't know how to people anymore. We do not know how to socialize as well as we did before, even those of us who may consider ourselves extroverts. And so you mentioned, when you're looking for a friend, to be clear about what your capacity is. And so if I'm someone listening who wants to build a friendship or build friendships, and I just don't have the same energy that I did pre-COVID, what would be your suggestions for starting with that?
Oh, you are so spot on. You know, what you just mentioned, that whole, I don't know if I have the same capacity, actually ended up being the number one response we received when we interviewed 50 women a couple months ago. We asked them, what's your top post-pandemic friendship fear? What are you scared about when it comes to reemerging and with friends? And, you know, the answers ranged from everything with, you know, I feel like I lost my social skills to, you know, I feel guilty about reaching out to friends I haven't talked to in a year. How do I do that? But the number one response was, I don't think I have the same energy. I don't think I can do it like I did it before. And so, you know, you're spot on with that. You know, the first suggestion I give is to, you know, you have to be clear on what you have to give physically, mentally, and emotionally. And then the next step, and we hear it all the time, so we eye roll because we hear it so much, but is to communicate that. And it's okay. You know, if I know that, you know, hey, I don't think I want to fill every single weekend with a social activity anymore. Great. That's good that you know that. Now, the next step is the next time somebody invites you to something and you really don't want to go because you want to reserve this weekend for yourself, to say that, because the alternative is what we say yes out of guilt, or for a lot of us, fear of missing out. We fear that if I decline this invitation, then they're not going to invite me anymore, so I have to keep it going, you know. So it's okay to say like, oh, that sounds like such a good time, I'm actually going to, you know, be in the house this weekend, but give me all the details on Monday, girl. You know, there's a way to decline gracefully and to say, you know, thank you for thinking of me, I'll catch y'all next time, because you know that if you go, you're going to have, you know, resentment toward them that you're there. You're going to be dreading it all week leading up to the day. You know, I know for myself, I'll be honest, sometimes I sign up for things I really don't want to go. Then my husband's got to hear about it all week because I'm like, I don't want to go to this thing, but that's on me, you know. And so, you know, confidently to say, you know, to know how much you can give. You know, I don't know who to credit with this because I share it all the time and I don't know who made it up. It's not mine. But I once heard somebody kind of refer to, you know, especially for introverts and extroverts, you know, the difference would be, you know, think of coins, having a certain amount of coins to spare every day. So, you know, an introvert wakes up and they only have 10 coins to give, and they give those coins out throughout the day, and by the time they're done, they're out of coins, they're tapped out. But extroverts wake up ready to collect some coins, like, let's get some coins today. And so we love being social because every social interaction is collecting coins to us, and that energizes us. So, you know, it sometimes starts there. Are you energized and recharged by alone time? You're probably an introvert and you need to manage that. Some of us are doing things to burn ourselves out, and we don't have time to pour into social event and friendships because we're doing so much on the other end. So, you know, it's important to have social time. I don't think the digital world will ever replace in-person time, ever. But, you know, we've got to pour into that, but you got to know your capacity. You have to feel confident to exercise, you know, to communicate your boundaries. And then even with physical boundaries, you know, I really just want to meet outside. That's where I can relax a little bit. I still get a little nervous about meeting inside, even though I'm, you know, personally I'm vaccinated. So sometimes I'll jokingly say, you know, I just got invited to dinner, you know, last night. And I was like, okay, sounds good. We're sitting on the patio, right? You know, and so, you know, there's a way to playfully say like, hey, this is what I'm comfortable with. And that way you don't have to have so much anxiety once you do arrive, because you kind of set the terms before you went. And so know your capacity, that's important. But the next step would be to communicate them so everyone's on the same page.
If you've ever listened to an episode of Black Girls Heal and thought that was powerful, but now what? BJ's Members Club is for you. Inside, you'll get ad-free bonus episodes and an archive library of all of our current episodes without ads as well, in-depth worksheets for every topic we cover, and special drop-in lessons to help you actually apply what you're learning. This is your space to reflect, grow, and make real changes in your healing journey. Join today at blackgirlsheal.org/members and take the next step towards becoming your healthiest version of you. You know what doesn't belong in your summer plans? Getting burned by your old wireless bill. While you're planning beach trips, barbecues, and 3-day weekends, your wireless bill should be the last thing holding you back. With Mint, you can get the coverage and speed you're used to, but for way less money. And for a limited time, Mint Mobile is offering 3 months of unlimited premium wireless service for $15 a month. All plans come with high-speed data, unlimited talk and text, delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. Use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and bring your phone number along with all of your existing contacts. My family uses Mint Mobile and you should too. With their affordable plans and coverage, it's a no-brainer. This year, skip breaking a sweat and breaking the bank.
Get this new customer offer and your 3-month unlimited wireless plan for just $15 a month at mintmobile.com/BGH. That's mintmobile.com/BGH. Upfront payment of $45 required, equivalent to $15 a month. The limited time new customer offer is for the first 3 months only. Speeds may slow above 35 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Taxes and fees extra. See Mint Mobile for details.
Mm-hmm. Something you said was so subtle, but I think it was so important is as far as I lost it. Sorry, I lost it.
That's okay.
I completely lost it. I'll come back to it when I remember it. But I did want to ask just about, is there a place sometimes for pushing, or not, maybe the right word isn't pushing, but maybe testing what you feel like your capacity is or how many coins you think you have, especially because, this podcast, most of the women who listen to this podcast identify with being someone who's love avoidant, right? And so constantly finding patterns to create distance and buffers in relationships. And so, I just make up that we can have lots of justifications of why we only have 5 coins, but it's because we're so used to not really being open and vulnerable in relationships, and we actually need to push that a little bit just to see that the water is fine. And so I don't know if you would agree with that or adjust that. What are your thoughts?
Totally. I have a podcast called Friend Forward, and we recently interviewed a psychologist who specializes in anxiety, and her name is Ellen Hendrickson. And she said, if you have some anxiety or you feel unworthy or you're not sure if you want to get out there, if you're 70% comfortable, do it. Because a lot of us are willing to be 100% comfortable, to be 100% ready. And for a lot of us, that won't ever naturally happen because of experiences we've had, some complexes we've gathered along the road of life. But if you are able to reasonably assess the situation, and there's no danger there, it's a little uncomfortable, but there's no real danger there, you do have to push yourself. And research tells us that sometimes you have to do the behavior before the emotions catch up. But we are like, oh, I'm not feeling it, that doesn't feel natural to me. And that's a worthy, valid emotion. Oh, I'm not comfortable, so I'm not going to do it. But sometimes we're not comfortable because we never do it. We never exercise the muscle, and we have to flex the muscle to get comfortable. There is space to stretch, but we don't want to stretch ourselves because I'm not used to doing that. I'm not sure if I can handle that, but you have to try. You have to try. And so, whether it's with getting out there and meeting new people or even socially, you don't have to go from being in the house all day to going to the gender reveal party. That's a big leap. There are a lot of social things between there. There's, chatting a little more extensively with the cashier at Target. There's having a few more phone calls. There's inviting one person over in the living room at your house to, just have a single cocktail for an hour and catch up. So it doesn't have to be jumping into the deep end in terms of like social engagement. It could just be tiny little things until you work yourself up to a room full of strangers, and now you feel like you have to network. And so when it comes to socializing, take baby steps, reach out to acquaintances and push yourself to do little one-on-one things till you're comfortable. Sit on a patio and tell yourself you have an hour to catch up over lunch. So you know how much energy to store up, and really go from there. But you're so right. And I've heard you say that before on this show because I listen. And I think it's just, we have to stop telling ourselves the stories of, this is the only capacity I have right now. If you've never kind of pushed to see, okay, I am capable of more, but it signals to our brain once we try to do more and we're successful, that our brain's like, girl, you did that. You could do that. Okay. But how do we even give ourselves the opportunity?
Right. Yes. And especially prioritizing. So I still don't remember the exact phrasing you used, but I do remember the point which you actually just connected to, which if we want to build relationships, we have to prioritize the time and the space for it, because we're always going to have competing obligations or thoughts or narratives, whether or not it's because we're an introvert or a mom or busy or we're traveling or whatever it might be. We have to say, okay, if friendships and relationships are important, I have to make sacred time to cultivate it, because it's not just going to happen, especially if I always have things that I will put in front of it.
Yeah, it's funny because, I often get asked, why do you only talk to women, and why do you, and, I can give you a whole list of why, but there are some things that make women to women friendship especially, special and unique. And one of the things I like to share is, most of us are familiar with that study about fight or flight response, but when it was first done, they didn't incorporate many women into that study. So they did it again in the 90s, and they found that women have more range. We don't just have fight or flight. We also have tend or befriend. And so when we're stressed, one of our responses is literally to go to other people when we're stressed. And they found that when women meet up, when they're stressed, being together releases oxytocin, which literally works to alleviate the stress. And so it's funny because we have that stereotype of, oh, what are you going to go tell all your friends and talk to all your friends? And it's like, yes, I am, because otherwise I'm going to, really hurt you. So I need to go talk to my girls right now. And so, there's real benefit to making time to spend with your friend. And I know a lot of us, we already put up the hands as we're listening, but my job, but the kids, and that's all true. All it means is we have to be even more intentional. And I know it doesn't sound sexy, but well, maybe now we have to put it on the calendar because, it's not an episode of Girlfriends where we just happen to all be free at the same time at the cafe every day. Like, that's not going to happen. It's not. And so, we've got to put it on the calendar. A lot of us were grappling with, how can I find extra hours in my day to spend time with friends? But we need to see it as, how can I layer time instead of finding more hours? And so if I know that I do laundry every Sunday night like clockwork, maybe I arrange to have a call with a friend and I say, hey, I haven't heard your voice. I miss you. You want to do a catch up Sunday night around like 8-ish for just like 30 minutes? And I like to encourage clients to put a duration on it because a lot of times people are more inclined to say yes if they know what to expect. And so you want to give them clear duration. Sunday, 8 o'clock, 30-minute catch up. And I just want to hear your voice. There's new research that emerged, I think late last year, that found that just a 10-minute phone call boosts our mood with a friend, just a phone call. And yes, we all are all capable of it. I'm sorry, even the busiest woman, we've got 10 minutes. And so where can you layer in the phone call in your day? But you need it to boost your mood. You need it to de-stress. You need it as a reminder that you're not alone in this world and there's other people who care about you. And so all those things are so important. And we have got to stop seeing friendship as a luxury and a nice to have. And we need to start viewing it from a health perspective. It's a need to have. And I need time with my friends. I need to connect with other women for the sake of my mental, physical, and emotional health.
Yes to everything you just said. Sometimes I wish that I could just make words bigger and bold and just shout them from the rooftop, because that is so important, that this is a physical, biological need. I think especially in our world that is very male dominated and male focused, a lot of things that are considered more feminine or related to people who identify as women, like friendship, like kindness, like service, like all these other things, they get diminished in value. And it's more, we got to succeed and achieve and accomplish. Versus connecting is so vital for us to have a healthy and productive life, which is why we will go through life wondering what's missing. And it's because we don't have constant, healthy connection to emotional nourishment, to physical nourishment and comfort. And so we will make decisions from there in hopes of trying to get that because we don't have healthy sources in the first place.
Yes. Oh, and I love that you use that word nourishment. That's so good. And it's true. And, I think, I keep saying research and I need to be more specific with studies, but, research tells us that the single greatest determining factor of our overall well-being and life satisfaction is the quality of our relationships, not your marital status, not your income. And ironically, those are the things we strive for, but the quality of your relationships. And so, I've had a whole podcast episode on this before, but I know another talking point is often that we sometimes invest so much in our romantic relationships. And I have theories on that. I don't know if it's because we live in a world that culturally for women, we're more celebrated when we're partnered. I don't know if it's that. And so we are eager to find the one and we put in the work and we stay after a person's betrayed us multiple times because we're trying to make it work, with this person. And we don't celebrate, wow, she has a steady group of solid friends. No one's throwing a party for that, so I don't know if that, kind of contributes to it too. But, there's nothing about, even at the root of your romantic relationships is friendship. At the heart of a good romantic relationship is two people who know how to be good friends. And so, we've got to put that first because, to your point, it does nourish us in so many ways.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. So, one of my I guess my next to last final question is, I'm listening. I'm bought in. I want to find friendships. I've self-assessed and figured out what it is that I want, what my capacity is, and what my intentions are. And now I'm ready to make it happen. And, work is not an option because I work from home. So what is my next step?
Okay, so this is my favorite. I often say, I know coaches and therapists, we are like, everybody stay in their lane. I'm quick to say I'm no therapist, but I'm a coach. And coach is what we specialize in is, what do you want to know how to do firmly? We can talk strategies all day. So this is my jam. And so I have 100 strategies for how to make friends, but, I'll share with you 4 that I think are quick, easy. You can do them today. So the very first thing I like to suggest is to start with your super connector friends. So these are the people we know who are super extroverted and they thrive on bringing two people together. So I'm one of those people. I like to be like, oh my God, Maria, you should meet my friend Michelle. Like you two would love each other. That's fun for me. And so we all know that person. So one strategy is to reach out to that person, DM, text, and just say, here's your script to say, hey, I'm trying to get more plugged in. And I thought of you because you're always with a group of people. You're always doing something really fun. And so I just wanted to ask, is there anything in town, worth checking out? Any events you'd recommend? So one thing that this does is it sets you up to get some really good recommendations of where to go to meet new friends. But another possibility is sometimes these super connectors are like, oh yeah, as a matter of fact, we're going this place on Tuesday, you should come with us. And what that does is kind of give you an in, and you're not putting yourself out there super vulnerably to say, can I come with you? But a lot of times they offer that on their own because you said, I'm trying to get plugged in. So sometimes it leads to an invite. And the reason this is helpful is because if somebody introduces you to their friends, those friends transfer the trust that they have on the super connector onto you. And it helps to kind of expedite the potential for friendship because they're like, oh, Jamie? Okay, well, a friend of Jamie is a friend of mine. And so the first strategy would be to reach out to your super connector friends and communicate your need. But so many of us don't want to say we're looking for friends and that we're trying to get out there because we feel like, oh, I look desperate. I don't want to look. And we're all thinking it. We all want to connect. It's not just you. And so just make it plain. So, the first strategy would be to hook up with those super connector friends because they're really eager to put you in touch with opportunities. The second strategy would be to find a way to integrate more routine into your day. And this is especially for my newbies with the work from home environment, because a lot of us will stay home all day and simultaneously say, God, I feel disconnected. And so, it starts small. Do you have a dog? You should be walking your dog at the same time around the same path every day because moms are out there with their kids doing the same thing every day. The same person is landscaping in the yard. The same other people are walking every day. We are creatures of habit. So how can you find a way to create more of those serendipitous moments of falling into organic conversation with a stranger? Can you make yourself work at the same coffee shop every Friday at 11? And that's just when you're going to get out of the house. But we don't even have opportunity to see other faces because we think it's either, at home all day or we have to go to parties. And there's other ways to create opportunities to socialize. So the second thing would be to kind of create those routines for yourself to get out of the house, but it's got to be the same thing each time so that you can see familiar faces and now y'all feel comfortable saying hello to each other. Strategy number 3 to find new friends is one that you've heard of before, but I don't think that we're doing it right. And so a lot of us are familiar with websites like Meetup, MEET, meetup.com, and other online websites that allow us to find specialized interest groups and to link up. One equivalent might be like a Facebook group or something like that. So some of us roll our eyes at this strategy because we're like, well, yeah, duh, of course. But here's the problem that the mistake we're constantly making is we'll attend a meetup, whether it's like a virtual event or an in-person one. We'll go to one of those interest groups. And we say to ourselves, I wasn't feeling it, and we don't go anymore. And I always challenge clients to go 3 times, 3 full times, for 2 reasons. One, how do you breed familiarity with anybody in the group if you went 1 time and then you weren't feeling the sparks and then you leave? What this does is gives you an opportunity to say, like, hey, on my 3rd time, I can say to somebody, hey, last week you mentioned something about your dog being sick. Like, how did that go? Or, hey, you mentioned something about your job and I was thinking about it this week. I think I know somebody who works with you. But I don't have that if I only go 1 time and I say, I didn't find my people, I'm never going again. And so you have to go to start to feel familiar with people in order to get comfortable and to feel close and to have some kind of connection. And the second mistake that we often make is if I go and I'm secretly kind of waiting for people to impress me, like I'm auditioning them. And I'm like, I don't know. And then I leave, it affects how I engage. And so I should be showing up when I show up. And I'm going to ask questions and get people's names and mingle a little bit. And now it makes it easier to go the 2nd time and the 3rd time. But if I'm telling myself this might be the only time, it's directly going to affect how I engage once I'm there. And so I like to say, give it 3 times and really show up. And that's how you start to feel more comfortable with the people who are there, and then lay the foundation for a potential friendship. And then the 4th tip that I like to give, for those of us who are not going out and about and we feel comfortable staying inside right now, is a lot of us are doing the Zoom meetings and the Zoom happy hours or whatever, but we just show up and then we leave that moment to that moment. So I'll have a meeting and then when we're done, and I move on to something else. But if we start to train our brain to look for opportunities to connect, I think you'll be surprised by, how many opportunities there are. So for example, let's say I'm attending a work meeting and somebody says something really funny in the meeting, or somebody asks a really great question. When that meeting's over, it's not over. A lot of us don't carry momentum. That's where things drop off and go cold. So I'm going to keep momentum from that meeting. I'm going to send a one-on-one email to the person who asked a question or said something funny. And literally just 2 sentences. I'm going to say, the girl's name is Sherry. I said, hey, Sherry, good seeing you in the meeting today. I just wanted to reach out to say thank you for asking that question because I was thinking it, but I wasn't feeling bold enough to say it. So I'm glad you asked it because I was dying to know the answer. So just shooting a message to say, I appreciate you. Thanks for asking that. That is it. Because it opens the door for her to say like, oh my gosh, I know, right? Well, they need to be clear on the expectations. Am I right? But it opens the window for us to start having banter. And I'm also signaling to her that I'm open, that I'm warm, I'm friendly, I see you, but I'm signaling to her that I like more, that I think she's cool, and that's it, whatever. But a lot of us, we have our meetings, we go, and when it's over, and then we go to the next thing. But how can you extend moments of connections after we've all left the Zoom room? So I think a lot of us would find that there's the material and potential. We just have to train our eyes to start seeing it.
Yes. I love what you just said about sliding in somebody's DMs, but for friendship. I'm going to add something that I think is important because sometimes people will slide into my DMs and I can tell that they want to build a connection and they'll say something like, we should I really love what you do, or I agree with that. And, we should talk more or something. And I'm like, okay, but they don't tell me what they want. And it's this really open-ended invitation. And I got a lot of stuff going on. And so it's not really about whether or not I'm interested. There's not anything specific I can say yes or no to. But if someone was like, hey, I'm also in Houston, we should get together for brunch on Sunday at 2 p.m. at this place. Do you want to go with me? That's something I can do a specific yes or no to versus we should hang out sometime. I'm in Houston. Ma'am, I would love to, but please help me. Help me help you, right?
Oh my gosh, that's so good. Yes. And I always give a formula to clients for that very reason. We'll say, well, it just fell off. I thought we were cool, but she didn't respond. Or we were both like, yeah, we should get together. But then it still requires the mental labor of figuring out, oh, okay, whose turn is it? What to do? I have to figure out what we're going to. And so I always say, if you're doing an invite, you need 3 components. You need to give an objective. So what are we talking about once we get there? Like, why are we getting together? These days, we're all, a lot of us are a little more suspicious anxious than we used to be, because it's like, are you selling me on something? Is this genuine? So what's your objective? Do you have somebody you guys both know in common, or are you guys both from the same place, or what do you want to talk about when you get together? The second thing is to have a date and time, and then finally a duration, like we talked about before. Hey, do you want to grab, brunch around noon for just like an hour to, get to know each other, because I'm new to the city, so that's such a great point, because a lot of us have that complaint about on the other end. Oh, I reached out to her and told her we should get together, but she didn't respond. You're the woman who's not responding, because you're like, girl, what do you want to do here? Like, get more clear. So yeah, that those specifics are important.
Yeah. And then just to follow up to that, just because now I'm worried that I might get a lot of DMs from people who listen to this who live in Houston. Sometimes when people say no or they're not available, it has nothing to do with who you are or your value, but they just are busy, right? And they, going back to what you said about capacity, they just don't have the capacity. But had it been any other time or date or place, it would be on and popping, right? So going back to those feelings of self-worth and how we can look for evidence to reinforce that someone doesn't like us, or that they're mean, or they're judging us, or that this never works out for me, friendship just isn't available for me, to do the work to step out of those triggers, to heal that, so that you can be fully present and know I have worth and value in all relationships. And if this person is not available, that has nothing to do with me. It just has whatever to do with their status. And I can find friendships with so many people. The world is open to me.
Oh my gosh, so true. And we have to think about, how exhausting. Some of us are tired and scared, but how exhausting if, your confidence in yourself and your worth is always going to be reliant on what the last person said to you. That sounds like such a burden, And so at some point, for some clients who do express this, feeling of, well, gosh, nobody gets back to me and all my friendships fail, and I guess I'm just not, I first start and say, what are the things you know about yourself to be absolutely true? Like, nobody can tell you differently. They just can't, especially when it comes to being a friend. You are a phenomenal listener, or you are such a giver, or you are hilarious and you crack your friends up. What do you know to be true about what it is you have to offer as a friend? And you have to get clear on that, so that you're not so shaky and wavering every time somebody's like, oh yeah, actually I can't make it to brunch. To your point, maybe she just can't make it to brunch. Maybe she is, tapped out on her, social range right now. But that doesn't mean that I am not interesting, worthy, lovable. It doesn't mean any of those things. And so it's just, it's totally a mental thing, and we have to hold tightly to those truths, so that we're not distraught, every time someone's unavailable, which is just natural. And it's about finding people who are available at the right time, and who are willing to pour into you in a reciprocal way.
Absolutely. Well, Danielle, this has been so good. I've learned so much, and I'm so excited for all the women who have needed this, who have been wanting female friendships and doing everything they knew in their own power how to get there. And I know you dropped so many gems, and you have resources available. Before we get into the resources and how people can connect with you outside this podcast, was there anything else any final words you would want to share, or thoughts that you had before we close?
My last little bit of encouragement is just that, remember that it's not too late, and you can find your quote unquote people literally anytime you want. If you're just willing to be a friend and to put in the time, there's the possibilities for friendship really are endless. And so I hope women hold on to that truth, because it, in my opinion, it all comes down to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. Well, how can we find you? Tell us how we can connect.
Yeah, so our website is betterfemalefriendships.com. The name of the business is Friend Forward, but everything's housed at betterfemalefriendships.com. And we recently launched a 6-week program to equip you with everything you need to master adult friendships. So from mindset to making connections to keeping momentum, and even how to exit a friendship gracefully, because they're not all meant to last. So it takes you through the full scope of friendship, and you can learn more about that there. But I'm eager to connect with women, even on Instagram at Friend Forward, and I'm always doing videos every week on TikTok at The Friendship Expert.
Yes, those are great. And she gives homework. Don't get ready to screenshot.
Get your thumb ready to screenshot the
That's
whole
right.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Danielle, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. This has been great.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Black Girls Heal. If this episode helped you in any way, please be sure to subscribe, leave a 5-star review, and share it with someone you love. And if you're ready to go deeper and turn what you're learning about here into real life change, join us inside the BJH Members Club. You'll get ad-free bonus episodes, powerful worksheets about every topic we discuss here, and exclusive lessons to help you apply the healing tools we talk about. You can join today at blackgirlsheal.org/members. And as always, take care of yourselves, and we'll see you next week.